I want to welcome all of you who are here. I appreciate you taking the time and coming out and seeing our Dr. Laura. She is one of my favorite presenters, and so let me introduce you to her, or give you a little information about her background. Dr. Laura Zettel-Watson is a professor of psychology and the coordinator of the Aging Studies at Cal State Fullerton. In addition to teaching and mentoring both graduate and undergraduate students, Dr. Zettel-Watson is a member of the Fibromyalgia and the Chronic Pain Center, the Center for Successful Aging, and the Health Promotion Research Institute. She has conducted and published research relating to several areas of gerontology health, including cognitive aging, social relationships, and the role of assistive technology in improving health. She lives in Fullerton with her husband and 2 children and is grateful for all the support that makes her busy life possible. We do thank her for participating. She has done these presentations for almost 13 years now. So again, I would like now to present you Dr. Laura.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate all of you getting up early on this weekend morning to share some time with us. Let me share my screen with you so you can see what we're doing here. And I am also probably going to stop my video. I'm on some shady internet, so want to make sure that I don't poop out in the middle of the presentation. Thanks again for coming. I have done a variety of these talks over the year, and as I was telling Russ and Ellie beforehand, this is my favorite audience. You come here voluntarily, and you're not just here to see what's going to be on the test. So I very much appreciate, like I said, you taking time out of your day. Today's chat is going to be on enriching our social relationships, primarily in the context of post-retirement, but really a lot of it will be relevant to just our everyday lives. And if you have questions as we go, I think we'll take a couple breaks along the way, and the fabulous Miss Ellie will be watching the chats in case you have any questions, and she can bring those up to us as well. So I will just go ahead and get started. As a researcher, since graduate school, you have to focus on something. I am a health psychologist by trade, a gerontological health psychologist. So I study the relationship between medical science, the physical body, but also how that all relates with our mind and our psyche. And I'm really interested in the physical and cognitive and emotional outcomes of a lot of our health behaviors. And the variable that popped up on my radar over and over and over again was this construct that we call social support. And what fascinates me most about it is that social support is associated, or in a research term, we say correlated, with basically everything. I have not yet found another construct in the field of health psychology that is not impacted by social support. So from that perspective, I just kind of fell in love with it as a topic, because it is just so critical to our belonging in this world. And so I have a little quote here for you. It's from the late British novelist Jane Howard, and I just love how she sums this up. She says, "Call it a clan, call it a network, call it a tribe, call it a family. Whatever you call it, whoever you are, you need one." So this recognition that no matter what we're calling this idea of social support is going to be critical in our everyday lives. And so what I have some of the things that I've looked into, or my research teams over the years have studied, is the association with social support with all of these factors. For example, we find that folks who have higher levels of social support have lower levels of depression, lower levels of loneliness, lower levels of anxiety. So our mental health is better when we've got more social support. We also have higher levels of life satisfaction and happiness. So again, better overall well-being. We tend to have fewer health problems. People with a lot of social support are less likely to get sick in the first place. When they do get sick, they have faster disease recovery compared to folks who don't have as much support. And then some of the coolest studies are the ones that control like these, tens of thousands of people in their sample, and they will control for every factor they can think of, um, you know, social economic status, sex, um, age, race or ethnicity, and mental health, physical health, all of these things. And even after controlling for all of those, they find that social support in and of itself is associated with a longer lifespan. So, social support clearly a key variable. And this is what I want to chat with you about today. So, when you think about your social network, and I don't mean if you're on Facebook, that social network where you might have hundreds of people, and some teenagers have thousands of people in their social network. And I don't know where they meet all these people, but they have them. But talk about social network, I mean those real life people existing in your world who you exchange support with. So, for most of us, that's just a handful of folks. But those are those really important people that we exchange support with on a day to day basis. So, if you try to think about who makes up your social network, one way that we look at this from a research standpoint is to utilize something called a target diagram. And it looks like a target with a bullseye in the center. This is from Kahn and Antonucci's research back in the late 80s, early 90s, where they really came up with this very clever way to assess the makeup of a participant's social network. So you kind of imagine yourself in the center of this diagram. So you're the little bullseye in the center, and you place the people in your life around you in these concentric circles. So the inner circle, those closest to you, are just that. Those are your closest network members. They are the people who are most important to you in the world that you cannot imagine life without. And for a lot of us, that might include our spouse or partner, maybe an immediate family member or two, and it doesn't have to include all of them. Again, these are the people that we are most close to in the world. So, best friend might show up in here. That's kind of your inner circle. And then the second circle out, that middle circle, is where we would put people who are still close to us, but not quite at that same level of importance as the inner circle. So that middle circle might include other close friends, other family members, maybe extended family, maybe a neighbor we're close with. And then on the outer circle, those are the remaining social network members that are in our lives for one purpose or another, but aren't as close as the other two levels. So, in that circle is where you might see acquaintances, some neighbors, maybe coworkers. For my students, a lot of times this is, their semester lab partner, somebody that they may not have become emotionally close to, but they deal with on a regular basis. So, these different circles help us map out what a person's social network might look like. And we can follow this up in research, and we do, with a series of questions that allow us to get at both the structure of a network and the function of the network. So, by structure, what I mean is we can ask questions about all of those folks in your network. So, I can say, okay, I see that you've got 10 people that you've listed here. And then I would ask a series of questions. What's their age? How far away from you do they live? How long have you known them? Do they know the other people on your network? Or how many of the other people do they know and interact with? That gives me an idea, very basically, of the size of your network. So in this case, in this graphic, there are 10 members to this network. So that tells me something about size. I can find out how interrelated the people are. I can figure out, are they very homogeneous in nature? Are they all, for example, um, you know, people on your block the same age as you who look just like you with the same background as you? Or are they quite diverse, people of different ages from different walks of life? So we can kind of get that perspective from these questions. And that tells us a little about your structure, the structure of your support. But that doesn't yet get into the quality of your support. What kinds of support are you actually exchanging with these folks? So we then might follow up with questions about um, who on this list do you receive tangible support from? That could be, assistance with tasks around the house, or a quick loan if you needed cash real fast, or um, driving you to an appointment if you're having cataract surgery and you need someone to take you. This could also include people who are there for you emotionally or as a companion, and vice versa, people you give that type of support to. So that taps into a deeper level, and that's the quality of support. And what you can probably start imagining is that quantity and quality are not always synonymous. In fact, when we look at younger adults, we might stop them after they've put the 40th person on their social network. Especially in my college students, if they're a member of a sorority, for example, they might be listing 30 or 40 sorority sisters and trying to jam them into one of these inner circles. As we age, though, we see a lot of changes to our social network. So, the biggest change that we tend to see is this kind of exiting of our network, those little red arrows, the people in the outermost circle sort of exiting from our network. And this reduction in network members is really a shedding of our less important relationships. So this could be upon retirement, we no longer, keep up relationships with some of those coworkers. For my students, it could be after they graduate, they no longer have that tight knit group of classmates or sorority sisters. This could be, people in our lives that have just been annoying and obnoxious that we want to shed and get rid of. We kind of prune them out of our network as we go. But what you notice over time is your social convoy. And I think that was a term that was listed on the back of the previous slide here. Our social convoy are these people that stick with us over time. Those people in the innermost circles don't change much over time. We have a great deal of stability with our closest relationships. So that is a really important component when we study social networks and social relationships, because those close relationships tend to remain intact. So, what research across the globe for the last 30 years has shown is that as we age, our social network declines in size. We see a lot of structural changes to our network, and the number one change is a reduction in network size. And to put this in context for you, the average college student will list between 30 and 40 people on their target diagram. The average person over the age of 75 will list 6. And at first glance, that might be terrifying, thinking, oh no, we're losing so many people from our social networks. But when the research is looked at in more depth, what we actually find is that that is not very problematic. Yes, we do reduce our network size, sometimes by an order of magnitude, but the people left in that network are the important people. They're the ones that we need to continue getting quality support. Those 40 people in the networks of my college students are not all quality support providers. Many of them are individuals who are fun to party with on a Friday night, but they wouldn't be who you would call after a breakup. Um, Interestingly, individuals with the larger social networks, like my college students with 40, actually report higher levels of loneliness than the older adults with 6 people in their networks. And that might seem counterintuitive until you stop and think, well, those 6 people are close people that I feel confident I can reach out to and they'll be there for me. If you think you have 40 people in your network, but you find yourself alone on a Friday night, that's going to feel a lot more, you're going to get this sense of isolation way more than if you had 5 people and they were all busy. So I think that, a lot of this change that we see is not really as problematic as we might originally think. Some of my favorite research in the field of gerontology has happened in this area. Laura Carstensen out of Stanford University has made a career of researching what she calls socio-emotional selectivity. And this theory, to my mind, is very fascinating in the sense that she recognized that yes, she saw the same thing everybody else was seeing in the literature, that our networks were declining with age. But she was recognizing that something else was going on, that it wasn't age per se that was having our network shrink. Instead, it was this growing awareness that does correlate with age of our time left on Earth. And she had this really cool study where she went out and she, in a much bigger study, lots of other questions, but one of the questions asked people, hey, if I could give you uh say lunch tomorrow with any of the following people, whom would you choose? A, selection A was a close friend or family member. B was a new acquaintance I'd like to get to know a little bit better. And C was the author of a book I just read. And what she found was that the younger adults were choosing B or C, somebody new, something kind of exciting and informational and new. The older adults were overwhelmingly choosing a close friend or family member. But she wanted to get into that a little bit deeper. So she created a follow up study where she went back to the older adults and said, this new drug has been invented that if you take this pill, you can get another 10 or 20 years to your life. And then again, a whole bunch of other questions so that there was more context around this. But then she said, who would you like to have lunch with tomorrow? And all of a sudden, these older individuals who previously had said close friend or family member were now all saying, oh, that author of a book I just read, or this new acquaintance I found interesting. To see if that happened with younger adults, she was doing this work in the late 80s in the San Francisco area. She went and found a group of young gay men who were dying of AIDS. And she asked them the same question. And they overwhelmingly said, now these were men in their 20s and 30s, they overwhelmingly said, I would like a close friend or family member to join me for lunch. So it was this idea that it wasn't age in and of itself that was, putting this into context for us. It was how much time we have left. And she explained this, that as we age, we move from, relationships that we need for some other benefit, right? A means to an end. So we have to be nice to our boss because we need that promotion. I have to be nice to my professor because I need that letter of recommendation, or I need to do well in this class. I have to continue having these relationships with my coworkers so that I can keep my job. We're motivated by sort of the next step, or that means to an end. But as we get a little bit older, we shed that need for information or kind of advancement, and instead start to focus on what is actually emotionally beneficial for us. Kind of get back to basics and just sort of say, what makes me happy? And the people that don't bring us that kind of joy, they're the ones pruned out of the network. Those were those people in that outer circle that we then kind of kick out or cut off. And then what we're left with are those social relationships that are the most the most meaningful, the most emotionally rewarding. So we're becoming more selective with our social contacts with age. And the reason I love this theory so much compared to some of the other theories about why our network shrinks is this one gives older adults agency. It puts them in the driver's seat and basically says, we're driving ourselves through this. We are selecting the people that are the most rewarding to us and keeping those folks in our network over time. So when we talk about those changes to our social network, there are a number of sort of major life events that the literature has addressed in terms of what are the things that shake up our social network the most. And clearly, these are the big three, right? So, any major health changes that put us in a position to really change the way that we might socialize. This can be an acute condition. So a few years back, I had a terrible ankle sprain, multiple surgeries, 2 years of physical therapy. I was on one of those scooters for a while. That changed my social existence for quite a bit. I was depending on people way more than I ever had. And some people that were more of just acquaintances kind of fell to the wayside because I wasn't able to kind of get out and about to nurture those kinds of things into closer friendships. So, and that can also be chronic conditions, chronic disability over time, things that put us in a position where we're no longer comfortable leaving the home. That can impact our ability to get out and socialize. It can also impact our ability to reciprocate things and friendships, and more specifically than family relationships. Friendships really rely on this notion of reciprocity. So, you do this for me, and then I'll do this for you, and you do this for me, and I do this for you. And the more we find ourselves debilitated in some way, the harder it is for us to reciprocate. And a lot of times it's not our friends pulling away because we're not paying them back. It's us feeling guilty we cannot pay them back. So we pull away. But for whatever reason, health changes certainly are on this list of events that affect our social network. Widowhood is another really big one, where this is particularly true for individuals who were super close to their spouse and their spouse was their number one support provider. Um, by virtue of losing that spouse or partner, you lose that number one support provider, that person that provided you with emotional support, instrumental or tangible support, informational support, companionship, all at once. And so that certainly shakes up a network. This can get more complex when individuals experience not just a loss of their spouse, but if their spouse was the gatekeeper to the rest of their relationships. And in the current generation of older adults, this is especially true for husbands who lose a wife. It was more common for women in current older generations to be the kin keepers, the people that connect the couple with their adult children and their grandchildren, who keep the social calendar. And so the loss of the wife in particular in one of those types of relationships can have a pretty heavy toll on the surviving spouse. So we do see widowhood clearly playing a role. Retirement is another major category where we are shaking up how we spend our day and where we spend our day and whom we spend it with. So retirement is another area where we tend to see some big changes. And that's the area that I'm going to focus a little more deeply on today. We all know retirement is a time of transition. I know through your previous boot camp series and other workshops you've had that you are all well versed on some of the changes that pop up following retirement. Some of you have gone through retirement, others may be currently transitioning, some may still be working. But regardless of the stage that you might find yourself in, recognizing that retirement is this big time of transition is clearly important. And thinking about some of the changes that occur and how that might impact us. So we've got our daily schedule. That's an obvious one for people who were working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Going into that change where your daily schedule is now you're in a different location with different people all day long, that's a major change to your social life. Contact with others goes along with that. When you were in the office or at your place of employment, you saw one particular group of people. And then post retirement, you're now seeing a very different group of people. So there may be a complete shift in the individuals that you see on a daily basis. For some people, retirement means a change in geographic location. So we see a lot of individuals electing to move following retirement. For some people, that's what we call an amenity move, where they're kind of chasing down the fun place to live. You get people who are moving from colder climates to become snowbirds in warmer climates. You get people who are, selling the big family house and moving into a condo on a golf course. You have other people doing what we call a kinship move. So after they're done with their obligatory work, they might pack up and move across the country to join children and grandchildren. So to kind of be in that area. The other thing in retirement, available resources become a very big consideration. We all want to be in a position where we have, that expendable income, right? Where we put ourselves in a great place where we've got the money to travel and do the fun things and join the fun clubs. But then there are other folks who might find themselves on a fixed income, and that may impact their ability to uh, keep up with their social relationships in the way that they may have been accustomed to previously. So, all of these elements come into play when we're thinking about uh, our retirement and transitioning. So, the rest of my talk is about how do we enrich our social relationships following retirement. So, how do we make sure that we are maintaining the relationships that exist and potentially making new relationships if we want to kind of fill in some holes? So, one piece of advice that I'm sure you have heard from anybody who's come to talk about retirement is this idea that for those who have not yet retired or who are thinking about retirement, one of the easiest ways to sort of stay on track with your social relationships is to consider doing more of a phase out as opposed to you work your 40-hour job until 5 p.m. on a Friday and Monday morning you wake up retired. Lots of people do it that way, the rip off the band aid approach. And that works really well if you've got a good plan. But a lot of people who don't really make a plan for not, and I'm not talking a financial plan, I'm talking a day to day plan. The rip off the band aid approach, meaning you work until 5 p.m. Friday, Monday morning, you're 100% retired. That might put you in a position where you're loving the doing nothing for about 2 to 3 weeks. And then the antsiness sets in. And most of us need to find a place to put that energy, or we go a little bonkers. So, those who have the ability to sort of phase out of their career and give themselves time to phase into post retirement life seem to have the best transition, because that allows them to sort of sample and play around with what retirement might look like. And if they find that they're not quite ready, they can phase back into more hours a week or, you know, reduce the number of hours more quickly if they're loving what they're doing. But what we need to really realize is that there's no one size fits all solution here. So, everyone's going to need to do what works best for them. But this kind of phasing in, phasing out allows us to slowly build up those transition relationships. So some key areas where the research has suggested benefits in our well-being post-retirement from a social perspective include the following. So staying connected to our coworkers. A lot of us who have been in positions where we've worked with the same people for decades, um, a lot of times those individuals become friends. They may become people who are in one of your inner circles. So figuring out if you would like to maintain those connections and figuring out how to do so, especially if those coworkers are not retiring at the same time. So, whether that means maybe you continue to join them for after work happy hour, or you drive in to meet them for lunch once a week, or something to maintain that connection even after you've left the workplace. All right, one of my favorites in the research is the getting reacquainted with our spouse or partner. For a lot of folks upon retirement, they may find themselves, in a marriage or a relationship that's been in existence for decades, but changes quite a bit following the retirement of one or both individuals. And there are different dynamics that happen. So, in a traditional household where we saw the husband being the bread earner and the wife staying home, raising the kids, keeping the house, Um, there have been a lot of re-entry issues when the husband retires and kind of comes into the space. He used to be gone for 50 hours a week, and now he's there for all those hours. And he may be one of several types of guys, right? He might be somebody who is kind of bugging the wife to entertain him. I'm home, let's do something, I'm bored, because he doesn't know how to fill those hours. Or he might be kind of creating more of a mess or more chaos when she's been the house, keeping the house all this time and creating more work for her while he is doing less work. So that needs to be negotiated. And there are also the people who sort of the wives who say, I have had this house the way I've wanted it every day for 40 years, and now you're back in it and you're messing it up. And we have actually seen women in their 70s who have never worked a day outside of the house go get their first part time job, just to kind of create some space. So, all of those are, possible problems that we see popping up. The key is one, first and foremost, communication. Communicating what expectations are. Even if you've already retired and you see some of these issues in your relationship, it's not too late to start having conversations. Figure out what the requirements are. Figure out, how to negotiate that shared space. The research also suggests that when both members of a couple are retired, that you should certainly plan to spend some time together, but spending time apart is more beneficial than spending all of your time together. And the rationale behind that is that if you have your own hobbies and you continue to have your own friend groups, you can kind of go off and do those things. And it actually gives you more things to talk about when you come back together as a couple, to have separate interests that you can then share with one another. And free time, alone time is good for all of us. So negotiating that with a spouse or partner becomes a critical part of sort of that social tie in retirement. Other things the research suggests: volunteering for a favorite cause. We see about 40% of people over 65 engaging in formal volunteering in this country, which is really amazing. It's the most likely group to volunteer. And we see really great benefits in terms of our well being when we volunteer voluntarily, right? We don't see this for people that are doing community service because it's been assigned by a court, or when students do community service because their school requires it. But among older adults who are volunteering voluntarily, they are really reaping a lot of, good well-being benefits. The next two: joining a social group, taking a class. You could be preaching this to me as OLLI members. The OLLI organization is absolutely incredible when it comes to both of these things. You should all pat yourself on the back for joining such an organization. The research definitely suggests that these are key ways, whether it be through social exchange or through learning a class of shared interests together. Both of those are excellent ways to not only enhance our social networks, but also to stay, invigorated, to stay engaged in life in general. Keeps us younger, keeps us healthier. So I don't have to tell all of you that. That is, you're already doing this. And then the one that's become most important recently is the online social networking. We very much have seen a change in the last, in 2020 specifically with the COVID situation, getting involved online, figuring out ways to be able to do exactly what you're doing right now, attending a talk online, staying engaged with folks online. This is going to become critical. Some of you may have figured out how to socialize with your friends and family online already through phone calls, video calls. Some people are doing text chains. My family has that set up. There's like 12 people on it, and every once in a while I have to shut it down because it's dinging while I'm trying to get some work done. But people are of 3 different generations sending pictures and cute little memes back and forth. just to kind of stay connected because we can't see each other in person. Some of you might have been engaging in online religious services. Online games are a great way to kind of give you a focus but stay involved. There's Words with Friends. You can do Scrabble online. You can play chess online. Those are excellent opportunities to, communicate with someone in your social network with a purpose. We've even found telemedicine being kind of advanced. We've had the capability for a long time, but insurance companies weren't paying for it or physicians weren't comfortable with it. But COVID forced us into it, and it's been very successful for the folks who have been able to use it. Now, I don't want to make the entire talk about COVID, but I do think it's important from a social relationships perspective to really recognize what this isolation has done. And it's really been kind of ironic from a relationships perspective. We have, back in March, right, when we realized that this was going to be a big deal, the number one thing, and Governor Newsom did this in California. He first created a sort of the mandatory social distancing, and it was first introduced for people over the age of 65 or other vulnerable populations. Then a week later, it was expanded to everyone. And social distancing was done with the best intentions to protect those folks who were the most vulnerable. But what is ironic about that is that by social distancing, those people who are the most vulnerable then became isolated. And social isolation also hits the most vulnerable the hardest. And to put kind of pour salt on those wounds, what we know about human nature is when we are stressed out or we're scared, we are social creatures. We seek out the support of other humans. So, in this situation where the most vulnerable in our population is sort of locked up at home alone, when you're feeling scared about that, you want to be able to surround yourself with supportive others. But the very nature of why we were locked up home alone says we have to distance from those people that we love the most. So, that social distancing is restricting our ability to receive the support we need most at this time. So, you can kind of imagine this vicious cycle that we've been going through where the people who need the most support are the people who are also, maybe from a health perspective, least able to be with their loved ones during the current epidemic or pandemic. So, this isolation that we found ourselves in has really created a problem from a networking perspective. So, we have to turn to other types of technology or other ways to interact. And online social networking has really seen a boost. Now, these numbers are actually from a year ago, January, before the pandemic. We don't have, these are nationwide numbers. So this is the most popular platforms right now: Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Those are the 5 most popular platforms for people of all ages. And you can see here that the middle-aged individuals, 50 to 64, are using all of these things more often than the 65 and older crowd. But the 65 and older group is showing growth in all of these from the previous year. So 46%, for example, nearly half of all people over 65 are on Facebook. A handful are on Pinterest and LinkedIn, and even a few are trying Instagram and Twitter. And I will tell you, I only have Facebook and LinkedIn. I don't have those other ones. So what's really interesting is the fastest growing group right now is the 75 and older group. So we are seeing plenty of older individuals learning how to use this technology and really starting to engage across these different platforms. And there are a lot of excellent ways that we can use these to expand our networks. Most of these platforms tend to be ways to engage either with people we already know, like Facebook, but some of them are for us to sort of follow other people or for them to follow us, like Instagram or Twitter. where we can sort of see what other folks have got, what they've got going on. We can comment on those types of things. We can follow famous people or politicians and tell them what we think, and vice versa. They can follow us. So those are the kinds of, the use of those types of platforms. But social relationships online expand far beyond these platforms we tend to think about when we think about social networking. There are so many other communities that are available for deeper interaction. So, not just, hey, here's a picture of my breakfast, but something that really allows us to go much deeper into relationships and the sharing of ideas and information. And these are just a few of the platforms that cater to mature adults. I'm sure all of you are familiar with AARP. They have a really robust nationwide online community. AARP is the largest lobbyist in the country, or lobbying group. Um, and so they are very politically active, but they also publish a whole bunch of information on health and um, transportation and just overall well-being. They have chat groups. They have resources for finding local support resources. So they are well established. They've been around for quite a long time, and they have been vetted in great detail by this time. Another one that's been well vetted and has been around for a while is Third Age. And this is kind of the retirement transition age. That's what Third Age generally stands for, is the individuals who are kind of retiring into this fun period of life. And most of these Third Age, Senior Chatters, Silver Surfers, these are all websites that allow you to go and link up in various um, networking groups or chat groups with people who have similar interests. Senior Chatters is fun because that is a global group. It's based out of the UK, and they actually have members from all over the globe. That's a fantastic place to go if you're learning a new language and you want to kind of pick up an online sort of pen pal, for lack of a better term, to practice, speaking Portuguese with, or whatever language you might be studying. So we get a lot of people who just can share in that. There are most of these you can find specialty groups. Some people like exotic cars. Other people might be big fans of cats. Others may want to chat about travel or cooking or gardening, fashion. You can basically, there are so many people involved in these sites that you'll be hard pressed to not find a group of people who have a similar interest to you. Um, these are all sites focused on communication and joining groups and kind of getting a sense of belongingness. These are not dating sites. There are plenty of other dating sites that are specific to a 50 and older or 60 and older or 70 and older crowds. And those are available out there as well. But these are to kind of, more social networking on a uh, friendship and companionship level as opposed to a dating level. But those exist too. Now, I do want to take a moment, especially in this COVID time, to make sure that uh, our community is aware of some of the services that are available locally for people who may be struggling more than just a little right now. Um, everybody can benefit from social networking in terms of just finding people that like the same things. But there are plenty of people right now, especially during this pandemic, who are truly struggling. People who are finding the isolation to be a bit smothering, or who are really in a state of distress. And so I did want to just take a moment and make sure to let you all know, in case this speaks to you or somebody that you're close with, that there are resources available for help right now. Some of them are very basic services for somebody who just feels like, I don't feel safe leaving my house, I'm at high risk, but who needs to get their basic needs met. So a lot of your local senior centers, although their doors may be closed right now, um, they are kind of working overtime to make sure that they are helping to create activities and programs to get people the support that they need. So figuring out ways to make sure that are that especially socially isolated individuals are able to get the resources. So contact your senior centers. They probably are the best source in your immediate neighborhood of what your resources are. A lot of restaurants, grocery services are now doing delivery. Most of them will do free delivery if you order a certain amount. That they've kind of taken some of their wait staff and turned them into delivery drivers. Also, there are so many of those like Grubhub and Uber Eats, Chow Now, all of these facility or all these new companies that are really cashing in on this service to do meal delivery from basically any restaurant. So you can get everything from McDonald's to, you know, the Cellar Summit House delivered through these services. Um, if you need assistance with, things around your home, check out your local Nextdoor app. Nextdoor is a neighborhood app that you actually sign up for your immediate neighborhood. And I'm on the one for my neighborhood, which is really kind of my neighborhood and sort of a half a mile in diameter, probably area. But during this pandemic, we've had a whole bunch of college students who are home, who haven't gone back to school, who are volunteering their time to run errands for people. Some people will charge a nominal fee. Many are doing it for free just to give something back to their community. And you could just tip them for gas or something like that. But Nextdoor is a great way to get people in your immediate neighborhood who can assist. And you can also volunteer to do that if you feel like you are not high risk but want to help people who are. That's a great place to go offer that kind of assistance. Transportation services are still available in the community if you have to get to a doctor's appointment or something. Medication delivery, most of the major pharmacies are doing free delivery of medication. And a lot of our programs are just doing mail order at this point to make sure that you can get what you need. So check with your pharmacies for that so you're not needing to venture out more than necessary. These two at the bottom I put on here. I love what both of these groups are doing. NAMI, the one at the bottom, is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have an Orange County branch. And then Friendship Line is something that was created in the state of California, so that is statewide. But both of these groups have created these toll free numbers for people to phone in if they are feeling like they just need extra support. It could be because they're feeling isolated or depressed. Potentially, some might even be feeling suicidal. That's a place where they can go first. If they feel like they just need someone to listen, if they need referrals to local services, it's a place to go to get a warm body on the other end who's a good listener. So people are trained um, to do this work. And both of those, the Friendship Line and the Orange County Warm Line, are available. Or they try to be staffed as many hours of the week as possible. And for those of you who are looking for some way to volunteer, you can call to sign up as a volunteer to be a voice on the other end when somebody calls and needs help and needs a listener. And these have been greatly utilized. They started right after COVID began, the Friendship Line, for example, and it has just ballooned because of the need. And the part that I find amazing is the number of people who have stepped up to volunteer to staff it. It has just been really overwhelming in terms of our community giving back. So those are places that you can reach out to if you need support, or you can volunteer for if you have time to give support and want to be that help for someone else. So just to kind of summarize all of this and to conclude here, regardless of where you are in life, I know we concentrated a bit on retirement, but a lot of what we've talked about is just in general, no matter who you are, where you are, what state of life you're in. There is the importance of being able to maintain your connections with others. So we need to be able to give and receive love and affection, and keeping those relationships strong requires effort on our part. We've got to invest in those relationships, particularly that social convoy, those people in your inner circles that you're going to carry through life. It's a necessity that we invest in those relationships across time so that they are there for us and ready to provide support when the support is needed. The great news from all the research is that we can form new relationships. We find this to be particularly true in people following widowhood. Um, and in fact, Ellie was telling me before this began that some people will come to Ollie post widowhood and kind of, some will even go so far as to say it saves their life, that they are able to form new connections and new relationships that give them a new lease on life. And the good news is you don't need 40 new friends. One or two strong relationships can be all that it takes for us to have all of our needs met and to feel secure and to have high levels of well being. So, forming new relationships should definitely be something that we are always open to. And intergenerational relationships become key here as well. We don't need all of our friendships to be people of the same age. In fact, we could do an entirely separate talk on the value of intergenerational relationships. So having people in your life from a variety of different generations is beneficial to all of you. And then I think a big take home from what I've talked about today is, particularly during this time of COVID, but generally as we find ourselves physically or geographically separated from our loved ones, being open to alternate forms of communication, whether that's easy stuff like email or more advanced things like chat rooms and some of these social networking sites. But being open to that kind of communication is going to put us in a better position to be able to really stay strong in terms of our social relationships and feel like we're still able to access the support that we get from everyone. So, with that, I will stop this and bring myself back and open it up to any questions.
Hi there. I'm actually not going to ask a question. I'm going to make a statement instead. Mostly because I think it's important for all of us to realize we're all in the same boat together, so to speak. We've been sequestered, I call it sequestered, since March, the middle of March and stuff. And I kind of want to reassure people that I probably share some of the main concerns and feelings that you all share. I just don't think we verbalize them very often. And what I'd like to share with all of you right now is the fact that it's been a long time since we've been able to get together and to feel each other, in our surroundings and stuff. And it does, it comes to your being that all of a sudden you're going, hey, I haven't been engaged in a long time. But also, I also realize the realization why we're not able to be engaged, and that kind of reminds me that it's okay that I feel the way I feel. Other things to consider too is I know with me, I feel like I'm going through my retirement again. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when we retire, we tend to feel a little lost for a while because we're not doing our norm. Our identity has kind of disappeared, so to speak. And so because we've been involved, Jim and I have both been very involved in doing OLLI and stuff like that, getting the classes going, that kind of stuff. That gives us new purpose. That gives us new direction. It basically is right now, it's our new norm. And now that we've been into this for 6 months, it's now become comfortable as opposed to the, constant go, go, go and missing our friends and everything else. We're finding ways of being able to engage with them through basically being in the classes. And when you're in the classes, it really does open up a whole new world for you. So I encourage all of you that maybe not be members right now to at least go to the open to the public classes that we have available, and kind of get your little fix, so to speak, of being able to bond and being able to listen and being able to speak. I have many people that come to my classes because a lot of them are open to the public, and they get an opportunity to be able to engage. So I encourage you all to do that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree 100% with that statement. I think when Cal State Fullerton in the spring kind of did an emergency go online, and we had, a bunch of faculty who had never taught online before and a bunch of students who had no desire to go online. They would have gone to a different school if they wanted online education. Everybody kind of rallied and figured it out, and it was a really stressful period, but a really amazing period to see the resilience of everyone kind of working together. And I think I would summarize it by just showing grace, or having grace for everyone, and patience, and kind of we're all in this together. But as time has gone on, and we started fall online with it was expected it was going to be online. I think that changed a lot of our perspectives, where we were sort of assuming that things had gone back to normal, or that this was the new normal, but without realizing that this is not normal, that there is nothing normal about humans only interacting in two dimensions. That's historically not ever how human beings were intended to interact. And so we just sort of assumed that this is going to save the day. Zoom stock, right, went up right all overnight. Everybody's engaging in these kinds of things, but I think that it's a great Band-Aid. It's a great short-term fix. It's certainly better than nothing. But I do think that, as a support social network researcher, that it's going to be critical for us to find some ways to get human contact back. I mean, just the research on what a hug does, or human touch. Those are, you probably have heard of the research with infants in orphanages, or babies who are born prematurely that need to be in incubators. Finding ways or skin to skin contact with mothers and infants upon birth. All of that research suggests that touch is critical to humans. But for people who are stuck, just not even be able to get that hug from your best friend once a week can be really problematic for people. And I don't think we realize yet what the impacts will be. There will be plenty of studies, lots of them are ongoing already, about what the lasting impact of this social isolation, the sequestering, what that will have on us long term. And I think we have not even begun to scratch the surface of consequences maybe we haven't even thought of yet. This is just a giant national experiment, global experiment.
It really is. Any other comments out there? We would welcome them.
Maybe I could ask a question of the group. You've all clearly figured out how to get onto Zoom and maneuver. How did you find that transition? Were you using it beforehand, or was it something you came to out of necessity? And how did you find that transition?
This is Russ. Yeah, actually, I had never used Zoom prior to OLLI converting to it, and so it was a transition for me to get on Zoom. When I was working many years ago, we used a lot of video conferencing, but that was with a lot more sophisticated equipment and software. And how I got started, my daughter, who had been hosting a lot of Toastmaster classes, had to move on to Zoom, and she was on it before me, so she kind of helped me get started on it. And then I took the training at OLLI, so I could get up to speed on it.
Dr. Laura, I would like to thank you again. It's always wonderful having you, and I'm looking forward to the next time that you present.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love coming. It's great to see everyone, and thanks for coming out on your Saturday morning.